There is blind justice, and then there is trading justice, so that you can finally afford to get that laser eye surgery. Not only will people find you more attractive once you ditch those old glasses, you'll be able to see your charts better. That's what we call win-win. Speaking of winning, it's time for a little trading justice, brought to you by TackleTrading.com.
Welcome out to the Trading Justice podcast. My name is Matt Justice with my co-host Tim Justice. Tim, how are you doing today?
Oh man, I'm doing great. You know, it's a nice night here in Utah, and excited to be here for the podcast. We've had some crazy news today, Thursday, July 17th of 2014. Kind of a interesting day, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about that. You know, I was just to kind of give you a little bit of premise. I'm here in LA and just went an absolute gorgeous Anaheim evening, 80 degrees, perfect weather. And I was given a workshop here, and I was going into lunch, and that's about literally like about 12:55. And all of a sudden, Bo, my manager, just starts just waving his hands, right? And just like he's pointing at his watch, he's giving me the cut sign. You know, and I'm in there just ripping on quantitative easing, right? And it's like, whoa, what's going on? And finally he comes up, he goes, "Hey, you got to take a moment." I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Dude, you have not seen the news. Just take a moment, look at the news. You need 5 minutes before the market closes." And so I looked it up, and you know, when I first looked at it about an hour before that, the market was down just a little bit, nothing much. But then that airliner got shot down with the Ukrainian situation, and Israel had invaded into Gaza, right? And this is like back-to-back events, and the market, the VIX is jumping like no other. I mean, that candle was ridiculous today. The market's down 1.5%. The Nasdaq's down 1.4%. The S&P's down 1.4%. The Dow Jones down over a percent. And it's just like, oh my goodness, what is happening right now? And it took a moment. And you know, my initial thought was, we don't have enough information. And I kind of felt like people were just rushing to protect themselves until we got enough information. And that's kind of how my read on it is right now, although the other markets out there, the Asian markets, are just getting kind of lit up right now. So it's going to be interesting. But I want to hear your take on it, because it was just so fascinating, you know, because your initial thought is always the human condition. You know, I mean, that's always kind of where your first mindset goes. But even in horrific human tragedy, like a plane where 300 people have lost their lives, you know, there's a real economic impact, because, you know, you look at kind of what happened with the airline stocks today, right? I mean, what was your take on it?
Well, let me challenge you on that for a second. Is that the first thought we have, is the human tragedy element of it?
It's mine, you know, like, because I always think about just, you know, that miss of going into that plane, and, you know, just people losing their lives and families changed forever. And that's always my initial thought, you know, and but at the same time, there is a real human tragic condition. If you guys can hear the fireworks in the background, it is go time for the Disneyland, you know, fireworks show right now.
Oh, the Magic Kingdom.
Oh man, they're taking over the world. We're talking about human tragic conditions, and there's people over there just enjoying themselves, but and like they should, right? But yeah, well, Tim, I would say
actually,
so.
I think it kind of gets down to what I was asking, is because that's not my first thought. It's my second thought. Mm-hmm. The first thought is, thank God my family's home. You call your kids, you call your wife. Thank God I'm okay. Thank God, that didn't happen to me. You know, it may seem like a selfish instinct, but that's just exactly how I feel in times like that. And then you start to ponder society. You start to ponder the structure of how are we safe in politics and everything. It goes down a complete rabbit hole. And you and I, we have backgrounds in politics. I mean, we grew up in a political family where we would have willing and open debates about all kinds of different topics, you know, other families.
Very open-minded family.
I remember being at other families, and I'm like, you guys don't debate politics? Like, what's going on here? Like, you just hang around and eat dinner? And
it's amazing, Tim. You talk to any other family, and they're like, first of all, you don't talk politics. You don't talk religion. You don't talk sex. You don't talk anything, right? And the Justice family, like, literally nothing is off limits, right? And it's interesting when you go into other people, their kind of atmosphere, and you're just very open-minded about things. Even when you disagree, you're still open-minded about things. But a lot of people just aren't like that. They just can't handle those types of conversations.
Well, I've carried that through my life, most of my life, and as a man with children in my 30s, I don't have the same political fire I did as a college student in my early 20s. And so when I bring up topics like that, when I have conversations like this anymore, I usually don't get any negative feedback or response because people aren't on edge. But yet I still don't hesitate to talk about it. Because I think if there's one thing we need to bring back in our dialogue in society is a willingness to have opinions, and it's okay if you don't agree with me and I don't agree with you, but what's wrong with having an opinion and talking about it?
Tim, I was talking about this today. We're a bunch of politically correct just wimps. I mean, just utter wimps. If you don't say something that doesn't offend anybody, if you say something that offends absolutely anybody in the history of mankind, then you're just absolutely wrong. You're offensive. You're not sensitive to the needs of others. And it's like, are you seriously? I think Thomas Jefferson would puke. I think he would leave America. I really do.
I made that joke the other day in a class where I said, I think the founding fathers would start a new country.
I saw you, and I believe that. I mean, it's really quite disgusting when you think about it, that you can't have any opinion outside what is the norm. And, I've always believed that the moment we start agreeing with the public opinion is the moment we've given up on life.
Yeah. So. There's several angles to this story, and I bring that up because, jumping right into the financial side of it just seems off to me.
It seems wrong. It does to me too. And, Tim, I had a hard time even talking about it in class today.
Yeah.
And you have to, but I had a hard time because it's like, don't you understand that the Israelis invaded Gaza? And the moment I start talking about it, Tim, you'll laugh at this. On a break, I had one of the students come up to me and literally start reciting Psalms 85, biblical. The world is ending, and Israel is going to take over Jordan and Egypt and all of this, and this is just the start of it. And I was like, well, it's a good thing I'm short the market then.
Well, I mean, God bless people, and their opinions and their beliefs and everything. And I have no problem if people want to share them with me. I enjoy
absolutely
it.
Not. Absolutely
I had
not.
a great conversation with a person the other day about religion and philosophy, and it even brought me back to some of the enjoyment I had, with those conversations back in college with my political friends and everything. And we talked Rawls and Foucault and everything. And believe me, those names will not register with most people, but for a political science nerd, they register with me.
Oh, Tim, I went on for 15 minutes on the social contract today.
I'm happy to talk about Locke and
Hobbes and Rousseau and which one was right. So, but yeah, and people, what percentage of my room did the social contract discussion go completely over their head?
Well, I mean, maybe the phrasing. It's just like markets.
They understand it though, right? They understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. We all are in this together. Anyway, I don't want to delve too far into the political side of it. It's just, it is striking. I can't say I was sad because these things happen around the globe all the time. I can tell you this from a trader's perspective. This is how I experienced the day. I didn't know this happened because I don't watch the news. I literally don't. When I'm trading, I don't watch the news. But the market tells me, and I've been trading long enough to know this. The market tells me when something weird happens.
Oh, absolutely. If I didn't have Bo giving me every sign in the book to take a break, I would not have known what happened until I looked at the VIX.
Well, and here's the thing, as a trader, we all know. Most days are scripted. It's like they've already been written in advance, in a sense. It's not that we know where it's going to go, but we know the futures market's going to open. There's economic data planned. Yeah. You've got market open. You have institutional volume. You have a mid-morning lull. You have hedging before lunchtime. It fades into the close. Then you have some volatility, and it closes.
And also, I mean, those institutions plan out their entire day, what they're going to buy, what they're going to sell. How much volume they're going to put in the morning versus in the afternoon, how much they're going to come into the close with. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Everything is out there and is canned on a daily basis. And then you have events like this that kind of rocked the plan, so to speak. The plan kind of goes out the window, right? And even at that, with the VIX jumping, 36% in literally like 30 minutes, the market still is only down, a percent and a half in some of the indexes. It wasn't like you had this rush crash, and even, you came off the lows at the end of the day. And so I don't know what it means for tomorrow, to be perfectly honest with you. I know the futures are trading down right now, and you also got the Asian markets that are slipping. The European markets will probably slip. Airlines got butchered. Malaysian Airlines, talk about some just, oh my goodness. Who in their right mind would fly Malaysian Air right now?
Oh my god, that's interesting to say it that way. What do you do? I mean, they got shot out of the air. I don't even know all the details yet, how high they were.
They were 33,000 feet in the air. The only thing that it could not be a handheld missile that can reach that high. It has to be some type of surface-to-air missile system.
Yeah, this thing has 4 rockets on it from the picture I saw, from what they were speculating they used. I mean, it's military equipment, and all of a sudden just happens to land in the hands of some insurgent. Bullshit. I mean, I get so tired of the political and forth, and I don't know what the right answer is. You're telling me that was just happen chance
that was missing a couple of days ago, and it was just randomly used today? You're saying there's something behind that?
Yeah, I mean, anybody with half a brain knows that. Right, left, center. Cuckoo. It doesn't matter. There's something behind that.
Let's take this, and this kind of interesting on this week. We were coming into this week expecting a volatility pickup, right?
Yeah, we were.
And we were looking at all the rash of earnings out there. You had so many financials reporting earnings. All of them beat to a certain degree. You had a lot of tech stocks out there. You had about 150. Stocks that were of some degree of importance report earnings this week. Then you had retail sales numbers this week. You had some housing numbers this week. You had some manufacturing. You had the Fed. You had Yellen give a speech for 2 days this week. We were expecting some type of volatility pickup, and yet throughout the entire first 4 days of the week, before we got the news on Israel and before we got the news on the jet going down today, nothing had happened. I mean, the Dow was up a little bit, but...
Before we proceed, just because we're new at podcasting, I did lose my Skype for a second. Check all of our settings to make sure we're still jiving.
We're rocking and rolling, my friend.
Hey, yeah, who needs a production manager? Who needs some fancy studio?
Yeah,
we've got all the tools we need. Yeah. We can bring the honesty to the people right from my living room with a headset on. I love it.
That's right.
Maybe one day I'll get some fancy stuff, but why not? Anyway, the volatility comes in expected ways, I think, is what you're getting at. And it looked like we were going to float into the end of the week. In fact, I was not expecting volatility, and we're going to get to Google in a second. At noon, I was expecting volatility at midnight, when after the Google report. Now, there are 2 actual points I want to make here with this whole thing, when it happened. And this is a lesson for those traders who maybe have only traded U.S. markets or U.S. stocks. Many times something like this will happen while other markets are closed, or at the bell, or now they're closing and European markets close up and they don't have a lot of effect from that news. Well, then it hits the Asian markets, and if it snowballs, it can pick up steam, and that momentum carries through the currency markets, and that currency move can then affect the next European market open.
Mm-hmm.
To continue to have pressure and all that. Well, by the time tomorrow comes, that's where you get the big carry through and the big sell-off.
Speaking of this about the currency market, though, the stock market's actually moved. The futures market moved, but on both of the events, both the Israeli when they moved into Gaza and the Malaysian Air line going down, you actually did not see the currency market move. The euro dollar didn't do anything to you. The U.S. dollar, Canadian dollar, nothing. The British pound, U.S. dollar, nothing. The Swiss franc, U.S. dollar, nothing. The only two currencies that actually moved is you saw an initial movement in the dollar yen, and you saw a movement in the Australian dollar and U.S. dollar in the major currencies as well. But outside of that, I mean, even at that, we're talking 30 pips. I mean, that's
right,
hardly
and it's
nothing.
even recovered in the dollar yen, even after hours. Since the Japanese Tokyo banks have opened, it's recovered almost the entire thing it lost midday.
Literally to the pip. I think it's like 3 pips off the news, right? And so you look at these markets here, And it's like, okay, how do you even read it? I mean, I see the news as a negative. I see the news as a reason for people to lock in profit right now. And a lot of the market has been expecting that so-called correction for a very long time, correct? And this could be a catalyst.
Yes.
It could be, but
yes.
we don't know yet.
The way that I personally read it is that it's an extension of what was already happening, and it may speed up what should be an intermediary correction that might last a little bit longer. The Russell 2000 small cap stocks have been hit harder in the last month than S&P and Dow. I think a flight to safety will be there. Here's the reality, and it's a reality check. You're going to hear me like a broken record until it changes. Even with the VIX spike, we're at 14. Mm-hmm. Now, could we be talking different tomorrow? Yes. Even with the sell-off, the S&P was down 1.1%. I'm telling those new traders out there, if you're in your first couple of years, we used to have 1% days on light days in the market.
Yeah, no doubt.
Like boring days in the market would be 1%.
This seems honestly,
like a big day.
That I mean, when you're looking at the S&P 500 itself, right? That, like, I still remember 2011. I'm not even talking 2009. I'm talking 2011, where you saw 2, 3, 4% daily in July and August and September. That's volatility. You want to talk about roller coaster? That's a roller coaster. 1.1%, and that's really nothing. I mean, the S&P 500 on the week is just slightly down on the week. The NASDAQ is literally on the week just slightly down. The Russell 2000, I think most, everybody knows I've been short on the Russell for the better part of the last 2 weeks, and I actually almost locked in profit on it on the news, but because it broke some support levels and whatnot, I actually kept my position on the put options on the Russell 2000. The Dow Jones on the week is still up, T.
Didn't know that.
That's still funny. Up.
Yeah, of course it is.
It's not up a lot, but it's up like 25 points on the week still.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, it's a sign. I've seen this before with markets plenty of times. Tragedy doesn't always result in selling. It doesn't always. So it may this time. Well, I'll get to that in a second, but it does not always. I've seen conflict break out in the Middle East. I've seen conflict in Afghanistan and Iraq. I've seen conflict in, the Eastern Bloc, conflict around the globe. We've had problems all over the place, potential risks here and there, and it doesn't always translate into selling.
I agree with that, but I will tell you this, T. There does feel there's something more here. And I've been saying that for about a week, but I look at the market right now, and I can't remember a time in the market where, from a geopolitical situation, where we had so many, activities kind of happening. We've kind of had
something more, Matt, and it goes back to something you talk about all the time. It's that I don't want to go all conspiracy theory tin hat, which go watch the Weird Al Yankovic video on tinfoil. Mm-hmm. He's doing this thing. Weird Al's been putting out parody songs for 32 years. Did you know that?
That just means years. I'm
love
old.
Him or hate him,
that's
funny
all.
Or not.
All that means is I am very old.
Yes, I still remember the Michael Jackson parody you did in the 80s.
I remember that
the Beat
as well.
It one, whatever he did to Beat It.
Beat It. Yeah.
And the Nirvana one in the 90s. I mean, anyway, he did one. You'd like it. Just go watch him. But back to the whole thing. It goes back to what you're talking about. I don't want to put my tinfoil hat on.
Hold on. I got it. Hold on. Just I want to play something.
Sure. You got it? You got this are we going to do some production value right now?
I don't know. Hold on.
Maybe.
Give me a second. Hold on. We might have something cooking right here.
Yeah, I heard something. I heard some action.
Dude, I don't think Weird Al has changed at all in years.
Just enjoy that.
Brought to you only by the Trading Justice podcast. Check us out at www.tradingjustice.com. Us and Weird Al somehow
hanging out.
Makes sense, right?
Surprisingly so. Makes a lot of sense.
This is a funny video. There we go, right there. Of course, he showed the Chinese military marching. Oh, he got the tinfoil hat on, man. I'll tell you right now, I might actually walk into class tomorrow with the tinfoil hat on.
You'll love the cameo at the end. You probably killed it too early.
No, it's playing. It's playing.
Yeah, Patton Oswalt.
Oh,
He's a
man,
lizard alien running the Illuminati.
Yeah. I don't know if everybody caught that, but that was awesome.
Right?
Oh, hell yeah, man. It's like, what is it, about midnight your time?
It's 11, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to get silly here. But no, tinfoil hats and everything. Coming back to the market real quick. Tim, give me your honest read here. Given everything we're seeing, economically, I think we had a mixed bag this week. Earnings outside of financial, I think we had a mixed bag this week. Even Google reported earnings today, and I haven't read their entire report yet, but the price action is only up $8. On Google, that's a tick. So given the geopolitical situations, the earnings situations, the economic situations, given what the price action is happening in the market, where does this lead to? Where does this lead you to seeing the market going over the next little while?
Well, it's exactly the reason I thought of the Weird Al song, because at the end, the whole tinfoil hat, conspiracy, that's a classic image. You put the tinfoil hat on. And this is why I love comedy. This is why we all love escapism at times, but you can't check out completely. It's okay to enjoy that stuff like that. And, it's fun. That's why, because it makes us kind of just giggle and laugh for a few minutes while we don't have to think about all the shit that we deal with all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
But the reason I brought that up is because it goes back to something you talk about all the time, Matt, is this transition away from one currency that we use, the dollar, as a primary reserve currency. I really believe that whether it's and I don't even want to speculate because there's no need. It doesn't matter who's directing this or if it's just being allowed. These insurgency groups and these conflicts around the globe, it is, and Russia dropping, and the whole thing with Crimea and Russia dropping out of the G8 or being pushed out. Russia wants to splash around the pond a little bit and say, you know what, we are making changes. And I think it does go back to money, just like conflict in the 80s. Most conflict is based in money.
Listen,
because of money.
Nobody
oil,
gets
money, capital.
Nobody gets more crazy than when they think about money. And I've been saying this for months and months and months now, is that this Russia is getting bold out there. And one of the reasons they're getting bold is nobody's holding them in check. Traditionally, Russians are very aggressive in their foreign policy. And nothing's out there to hold the Russians in check. And I'm not even saying they're wrong, because honestly speaking, I don't think they're wrong. I don't think Vladimir is wrong in what he talks about the unfair nature of the U.S. dollar being the reserve currency. I think the U.S. dollar being the reserve currency is completely unfair to the global marketplace. It's not unfair to us. It aids us, but we're one entity. And as we get further and further, as China gets closer, as we move more away from the petrodollar, you're starting to see these nations get a little more bold in their, talking. And, Russia's just getting more and more bold. And I don't know where it leads, don't get me wrong, but I will tell you this. I do think it leads to the U.S. Not being the reserve currency. I absolutely see that happening, and I see that happening in the next 10 years.
Well, and I heard a quote the other day, and I can't remember who said it. It was somebody else quoting another guy. So, but anyway, he said that change doesn't come because of inevitability.
Mm-hmm.
So if Russia and Putin want change, they're not going to just say, well, inevitably, eventually, we're going to have a new currency system.
They're going to force it.
They're going to force the issue, and nothing to do with that. I'm not even trying to speculate. It just is another reminder to me
I don't think it's
of the
speculation.
devious nature of politics.
I don't even think it's speculation, T. I think at the G7, what used to be the G8 before Russia, you said either left or were pushed out. I think they were pushed out, but I don't even think it's speculation any longer. I think one of the reasons you're seeing a lot of these geopolitical situations is because other nations are getting bold. Because, for 40 years, the U.S. was the only superpower. I don't care if the Cold War ended in the late 80s, early 90s. To me, the Cold War ended well before that. Economically, we were absolutely dominant. We were spending, a much less smaller of our GDP on military than Russia was. So, from an economic standpoint, the Cold War was basically over much before the Soviet Union broke. But at the same time, you're starting to see, after 30 years now, you're starting to see other nations get a little more bold. You're starting to see the BRIC countries get much more bold, T. Out there in, what was it, 2012? And for those of you who don't understand what the reserve currency is, basically what the reserve currency does, and the U.S. reserve currency system was established in 1944, the Bretton Woods Act. And basically at that time, it was tied to the gold standard. In 71, we moved away from the gold standard. In 73, we went to the petrodollar, where basically we forced everybody in the world to buy oil with U.S. dollars. That lasted until about 1999, when China and Russia left the petrodollar standard. And China, just recently, in the last 2 years, they have made international trade agreements with Australia, India, Russia, the BRIC countries, to use non-U.S. dollars in international trade. And just that alone tells you that the world marketplace wants to move away from the U.S. dollar as a reserve status. And now you're starting to see Russia go out there and do what they're doing, and you're seeing other countries do the same. And it is tied to the dollar. It absolutely is tied to the dollar. And we'll see kind of over the next 2-3 years. I honestly believe you're going to see a seismic change in the way our currency system is handled.
So many different, that's like the root of a tree, and there are so many branches of discussion that could come from this. This conversation leads to, let me just think of a few off the top of my head. What is America going to do moving forward? Are we going to get back to being an economy that actually produces and creates things, or are we just going to buy stuff from other countries? Are we going to change our foreign policy, our economic policy? How are we going to deal with conflict around the world?
It's a great question. And I was talking, I took my team out to dinner tonight. And that's something I like to do whenever I go out to an event. Want to treat them nice, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were talking about Obama. And there's historically on Obama, you either like Obama or you hate Obama. Right? There's very little middle ground there. We know a lot of people that hate Obama, and you and I are not two of those, by the way. We do not hate Obama. In fact, there's a lot of good things I think Obama has. But at the same time, I said you can say a lot of bad about Obama, and it starts with his foreign policy. If you want to get any traction with me, talk about Obama's foreign policy, because I'd like to know what it is.
Well, that's not my biggest criticism of Obama, and I'm not going to be an apologist for President Obama.
Hell
but
no.
I don't have negative feelings towards him either. But my biggest thing is that he brought in Goldman Sachs bankers just like every other president. They're tied to Wall Street. He wasn't going to change.
Well, and I don't know if you caught the news today, but there was an advisor to Obama that just went back and worked for Goldman Sachs.
Yeah, of course.
It's just absolutely ridiculous, and there's no difference in any of them. But it does. For me, it starts with foreign policy, and it's one of the reasons Vladimir Putin is so ambitious out there. And I'm not saying Russia or Putin might not be the same in another capacity. All I know is what's happening now. And unless I don't know what the fix is. I don't know if there's a quick fix. But I'll tell you this, I don't see this changing. I don't see what's happening in the geopolitical situation as something that's short term. I see what's going on as something that's happening long term, and I do believe it's tied to the dollar being the reserve currency, and I don't see it changing until we change our currency system.
Okay, but it brings us back to some common sense discussion, though, because I'll just think off at the top of my head. Problems in Greece, almost revolution. Problems in the Mideast, year after year, every couple of years, they have conflict spring up. And that's not just Palestine and Jerusalem. Plenty of other areas there as well that are in civil war, disrest, problems in Africa, problems around the globe, North Korea, threats all over the place. It's been happening year after year after year after year. The market keeps going up. So it brings me back to something I tell people over and over and over again. You can't trade what you believe. You can't trade what you hope. You can't trade what you want. You can't trade your politics, your worldview, your ideology. You have to trade what you see.
That's true.
And let's get down to the facts. The VIX spiked 30% or more, 35%, whatever the number was, to 14, still at historic lows. Until I see carry through with that, I don't think banks are really overly hedging. They hedge today because the news happened today. If they digest it tomorrow and then we have the weekend and it gets some clarity, Monday, Tuesday, all we'll be talking about is Apple and Amazon. Okay?
That's so true.
I'm telling you.
These situations have a short-term impact until they have a long-term. I'll give you that. And also on the VIX, the VIX actually sold into the close. Yeah. It didn't increase into the close. It sold into the close. So it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. But you're absolutely right. You got to trade with what you see. You cannot get out there and let your personal feelings, your personal political beliefs, your personal religious beliefs, whatever it is, you cannot let that dictate your trading.
No, if you do, you'll lose money. I can tell you that. I've seen people burn through accounts, small, medium, substantial, just because they hate the president. And I'll say it just as direct as I can, just because they think the country's going in the wrong direction.
I agree with
you. And so they bet against stuff,
Because they can't stand Obama, they can't stand politics, they can't understand why the market is going up. Right. whatever the case might be. I had a student. Actually, it wasn't a student. It was somebody that I was just kind of dealing with, and he got my information somehow. And when I talked to him, this was like back in 2012, so it was about a year and a half ago. And he had $450,000 after the subprime market, and he was so hell bent on the marketplace tanking. He was so hell bent on the Fed, and he hated Democrats. I mean, right-wing, radical Republican, right? And he just kept on buying put options. And I asked him, I said, well, what is your expiration date on your put options? And he was all short term. I'm talking, 1 to 2 months. And I told him, I said, you know what? You might be right historically, but you're going to have no money.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I've seen that before. It's rare, but every now and then, and it's not. And I don't want to paint this one way or the other, but it's usually somebody with very strong political opinions about what is happening in the country, and they just assume because they know it in their heart what is right, that will translate to stocks. Let me tell you guys, politics don't always translate to stocks.
Well, I'm going to take it a step further. It's not always. It's hardly ever.
Yeah.
You actually look at bull markets, bear markets. They have actually very little to do with how well the economy is performing or how horrible the economy is performing. That
or
correlation,
who the president is,
yeah,
or
that correlation,
they are a Democrat
exactly.
or Republican. It does nothing to do with it, and it won't have anything to do with it moving forward. You want to know why? Because bankers and billionaires don't care about that.
It's true.
Warren Buffett can vote for a Democrat. He's still one of the richest people that will ever live.
It's very true.
It has nothing to do with that. So when you trade and invest, you got to get down to technicals and fundamentals and risk. It's not about what law just passed in Congress or what the talking heads are screaming about on TV. So, and I know that's hard when you're passionate about something. You assume it's supposed to translate into everything in life.
That's true. That's true. But people have to hear it how it is. Nobody gives a shit what we think. Nobody does.
No, they don't. And I don't know how many people I could offend tonight.
I think we've hit the gambit.
By the way, I'm not a Democrat. For those who are wondering, no. I'm much more liberal than that.
Well, we're actually very libertarian. I mean, that's how we were raised. That's how we are. We don't believe the government has any right to take our rights away. We believe in small government. We believe in efficient government. We believe we give up certain inalienable rights. We don't give up all of them. And when we talk, it's amazing how many people will, pigeonhole us into being Democrats, and we're not.
No, I'm very conservative in that when it comes to almost everything you can think of. It's just
we're not blind conservatives that think only. First of all, Republicanism is not conservatism any longer.
No. I'm old school conservative libertarian, as well as very socially aware, and I don't have a problem with people doing what they need to do. And by the way, Wall Street doesn't either. They don't care about any of this stuff. No. They care about money. They care about what's going on with the fundamentals and the volatility and where they can make money. And so today's action, as a response to this political threat, global threat, conflict in the what would you even call it? Is that the Eastern Bloc? Do you say the old Soviet Union?
The old Soviet Union, Eastern Bloc, Ukraine, Russian border,
and even in the Middle East, they'll digest it and probably move on.
Wall Street does not wear blue or red.
Nope.
They wear the color of green.
What I'm more interested in, Matt, is how Google carries through into the morning.
Well,
I think that will have more of an impact on stock prices than anything else. If Google gaps up 9 points and then sells, because the market is also selling because of momentum through the day, that could be bad for stocks going into the weekend. If Apple doesn't kill it and earnings disappoint and we're moving into the Fed meeting on the 30th and there's more talk of interest rate hikes, that is what could really spark a sell-off.
Yeah, those are all more important.
This might have been the kindling. It might have been the little thing that jump-started stuff. But the fundamentals in terms of how Wall Street interprets all that will dictate prices moving forward.
Well, specifically thinking about Google here, the 15 minutes after Google announced their earnings report, it had a low of 565. It had a high of 595. You literally, in that 15 minutes, you had a price movement right around 35 points, about 33 points. The expected market move was about 24 points. So the initial movement was right in line with kind of what the market expected. The only thing is it didn't carry. Nobody knew how to kind of, take, analyzing what was happening in Google with what was happening in the geopolitical situation. Mm-hmm. After that, Google really kind of settled in, and about 45 minutes in after the market closed, Google really hasn't done anything. Google's sitting there at 590 right now. It closed right around 581. It's currently up 9 points, but I think what you said is so very, very important. How does the market react tomorrow to Google? If Google starts selling off because it cannot carry the positive movement in its earnings after the announcement, you're going to see that lead the market, and that's going to have a lot more to do with the market reaction tomorrow than what we saw today, in my opinion. Unless something obviously changes between now and the market open tomorrow.
It just reminded me of something I hear from traders quite often. When I don't know how many times I've gotten this email, "Hey Tim, why is this stock down? It says it beat earnings."
That has nothing to do with it. That always I get it too, and I understand it because I used to be like when I used to read an earnings report and the earnings report actually beat the estimate, but it was down, and I'd be like, "What in the world? Wall Street's cheating us, blah, blah, blah." We've seen an earnings report just be absolutely atrocious, but yet the stock is up, 5% overnight. And you're like, wait a second, that company lost $300 billion or whatever it was, right. and it's up, and it's just like, none of this makes sense. And that's because none of it ever does when it comes to an earnings report. The earnings report, and it doesn't matter how many times you tell somebody earnings is a complete and utter spin of the dice. That's all it is.
What we were talking about earlier, Matt. Some of it's pre-planned. institutions literally use these events as ways to move volume. And they might have made their choice to either buy or sell that stock weeks and months, maybe a month and a half in advance. They're like, okay, we have X amount of shares. It's a lot of shares. We can only unload it on the earnings event. I don't care if it's up or down. We're going to trim our position size
This is how we're going to drum up demand to sell the stock.
Yeah, what exactly?
Yeah.
So it doesn't always have to make sense when you read the headline. There may be more going on behind the scenes. We got to wrap this soon. I'm getting tired. It's late, man. You got to get up and go teach the good word.
Tomorrow, going to start with options. Going to start with teaching people how to trade options, calls and puts. Going to do a theta target tomorrow. Going to do some delta weighting stuff. Then we're going to get into cash flowing in retirement accounts, 401ks, IRAs, covered calls, naked puts, those types of trades. And then we're going to get a little ambitious tomorrow, I think. I think we're going to get into credit spreads tomorrow, bull puts, bear calls, condors, and show people the truth about what trading really is. Because when people first come into the market, it's all about just buying stock. Just when do we buy a stock? When do we miss? Yada, yada, yada. That's not how anybody really approaches making money in the stock market.
Right.
We always look to generate money in multiple different ways. Cash flowing through the selling of options, number one.
Those are really good strategies for new traders. I mean, even old traders. I think there's this false logic that is pervasive when you come into a business like this that for some reason, and I think it goes back to traditional education, we think that whatever we're going to learn next is going to be better than what we're learning right now. When, guys, the stuff Matt just talked about, people who've been trading for 20 years, they still use that stuff.
Yeah. We have such a desire to get into all these advanced strategies and whatnot, when some of the basic ones, they're basic for a reason, because they've been used for years and years and years. I do have to tell you something, though, T, and I had a good chuckle at this one. I had a student come up to me at the end of today, and, you've seen me do my presentation and whatnot. It was, we had such a great day. We were going through economic stuff, taught him technical stuff, and just, I love this crowd. So many good people that just want to change their lives there. And I had one student come up to me at the end of the day and kind of cornered me. And this is after everybody had left. And she says to me, Matt, good presentation. I just wish you were a better teacher. And I started what do you say to that? I mean, truly, what do you say to that? I mean, could I go to?
It would depend on my mood.
Well, I was in a great mood.
If I was in a
good
real
mood.
positive mood that day and nobody could mess with me regardless,
yeah,
I'd say, I wish I was too. Thank you very much. I'm going to work on that.
Yeah, that's kind of how I approach it.
mean it. Every word. Yeah. I really would. I'm not being sarcastic. If I was in a great mood, I would just be like, sure, yeah.
Well, I basically what I said was, well, thank you very much. You have a wonderful night. I'll see you tomorrow. And I just walked off. But, I just kept thinking, I said, you know what? You can never make everybody happy, and as long as you go in there and you give it your all and you try your best, and I know that's cliched, but I posted this on Google the other day, and you probably saw it, not on Google, but Facebook. You struggle when you have kids, a family, and whatnot. You struggle with the responsibility of educating the masses that we believe at Rich Dad Education, and what Robert Kiyosaki believes in. And every one of us feel that as well, with the responsibility of being a parent and whatnot. And as long as you reach somebody, I think that's worth it. And I think this crowd out here, I'll tell you right now, T, I love them. They're awesome. They're motivated. They want to change their lives. They're excited. High energy in the room, and it's just been an absolutely fantastic first day. And you know what? We're going to have a fantastic training. And you know what my goal is over the next 2 days? I'm going to have that woman come up to me and say, this was absolutely life-changing.
Well, I'll tell you, what's your tactic to be able to get to that?
Frankenstein.
Just
completely and utter butcher her, belief in what it is about the market. Just butcher it and then build it back up. I'm the U.S. government tomorrow, brother. I'm going into a region. I'm going to destroy the region, and then I'm going to economically build it back up in my image.
Right. And tie all the loans back to U.S. banks.
Yeah, I'll just sell them to somebody else.
Well, no, it's interesting. I don't think you cater to just one person. But maybe you just say hello. I think people can pick up on negative energies. So don't go in there. I'll give you some advice. Don't go in there thinking about it at all. Just another student in your class. Teach your class.
Well, you got to. Hey, listen. I agree with you. I know where you're going with this. You have to stay true to your message.
Yeah.
You cannot tailor your message to any one person. It's your message, and if you believe to your whole heart that every single person in that room can successfully learn how to trade and take control of their financial life, then you stay true to that message. And you know why? By the way, do you know why she told me I was a better teacher? And this was her complete and utter suggestion. I did not use my magnifier enough for her to see my chart. There.
Dude, it's got to be rough not being able to see. I mean, maybe she can't see stuff well. We have a mom who can't hear well. I'm sure she wishes she could hear stuff better at times.
Sometimes I think it's a good thing for her.
Yeah, don't sweat it. Yeah. You're a great teacher.
Hey, Tim, say a final message to the people out there. What are you, words of advice?
Well, in terms of the market, tomorrow is a very important day. There are some days that to me are more important than others. I think tomorrow is critical because the carryover, as those Eurozone banks open, while I'll be fast asleep, there might be some momentum that picks up. And as we open into the market in the morning, I have no idea what's going to happen. Google earnings, we still got to get the investors to come in while the stock market's open. You have to watch momentum carry through the day.
Yeah.
After that, I mean, if we can get through tomorrow and this news doesn't impact it like a snowball effect, we'll just be focusing on earnings next week. Apple, Amazon, all of them,
Let me give you a couple tidbits here. In the last 6 months, the market has sold off in this capacity. Okay, it has sold off very similar in this capacity. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, 7 days. Very similar to this. Okay, of those 6 times, the market has only continued to sell off more than 2 days one time. Only one time. The rest of the time, the market has bought it back up off the lows.
Yeah, because the institutions are confident in Fed policy right now, and they don't believe that they're going to change it until the fall or the spring of next year. And that's where we're at. Maybe more on that next time.
Fed? You want to go more Fed?
Let's wrap this sucker. I want to listen to more Weird Al.
You want to listen to Weird Al?
Yeah.
You want to go with Weird Al in the close?
Well, I mean, he's releasing 8 songs over 8 days. I think 3 of them are out. I don't know if any of them are any good outside of that one. That was the only one I heard. I mean, this will be kind of a shot in the dark. I know he did the one.
That's right. I think this is appropriate for today. Come on, what do you think of the music selection here?
Tom Petty's one of my top 10 all time.
Free Fallin', baby.
I actually love the album Wildflowers more.
Oh man, all Tom Petty's good. Any Tom Petty's good.
Here comes the hook right here.
Well, I got to tell you, Tim, if the market does continue to sell, we might see that free falling behavior we've all been expecting, brother.
You've been listening to the Trading Justice podcast. If you've enjoyed yourself and think that the conversations and topics we've covered are important, help spread the word. Give us your feedback. 5 stars on iTunes, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter. The Trading Justice podcast is proudly sponsored by TackleTrading.com. Get off the sidelines and get in the game.